for joining me, everybody. So, Sophie Mourlon. Good morning, good afternoon. You are Director for Energy at France's Directorate-General of Energy and Climate. And over the past few months, you have been conducting a survey amongst companies active in the offshore wind energy market in France. You asked them how to take things forward. And the deadline to send their copies in was last week, Monday last week, if I understand that right. I know it's still very fresh, but what are the first takeaways of this survey?
Well, thank you very much. Hello to everybody. Yes, we launched a survey, started in March and just closed. The idea was for this public consultation was to have feedback from the professionals, from NGOs, from on the way feedback on the way forward for our tenders. And for our public support to offshore wind projects. So it was a success. We had 22 answers from the industry, from NGOs, from professionals, from individuals also, and from our national regulator, the Commission de Régulation de l'Énergie. We are analyzing it, so I don't have much to say of what's in it. What I can say is that it will help us define a roadmap for future tendering, be it small fine-tuning or fundamental changes, and if need be, change the law. I think that we can do a lot without changing the law, but if need be, we will. We will especially look the way to accommodate PPAs with tenders, to have multi-gigawatt tenders. This is really a goal for us, to have standardized procedures, more standardized procedures, and to optimize calendars and grid connection. So I'd say that these are the goals. And well, we'll be coming back to the stakeholders with the results when we have looked at them.
I think finance is also one of the aspects that people were talking about, writing about, right?
Yes. Well, yes, the tendering, the consultation was all about public support and financing. We'll have other consultations on permitting, and this was not part of the consultation. It was really on financing and tendering, and this will be introduced. The idea, indeed, is to ease financing, lower the cost of the projects, but also to massify and standardize and go faster, in fact.
And so now you just received the results. What's going to happen next?
So we are analyzing that internally and with our regulator. The idea is to come out in the fall with ways forward. And this will be at the same time as other important steps, because of course modifying tendering and support schemes is important, but as I was saying, we have also issues on permitting, on capacity targets, and on deployment zones. So in the fall, at the same time, we will have a large public debate on spatial planning, for maritime spatial planning, to define the way forward and identified areas and spaces on all of our coasts, all of our coastal areas, with a view to 10 years ahead, and to 2050, with the ambition of having at least 18 gigawatts installed in 2035 and at least 40 in 2050. So this public debate is also for the fall. That will give us somewhere in 2024 a full roadmap to 2035 to 2040, starting just then with the idea of launching massive tendering and really accelerating the projects on all of our coasts to reach our targets.
This consultation has been about France. To what extent is your institution also cooperating with other countries? Is it important to look abroad to take things forward for you?
Yes, it's absolutely fundamental. First, because we set collectively a target of 300 gigawatts by 2050 at European level. And I mean, this is extremely ambitious. So of course we have to coordinate with with other European countries and non-European but very close, such as Norway or the UK. There are big issues on spatial planning in narrow areas such as the North Seas or the Baltic. So we are part of the North Seas Energy Cooperation, where we work with all the countries around the North Seas on spatial planning, on maybe in the long run, the way to produce hydrogen at sea, on connections, on grids, on markets also. This is very important. The importance is also to manage the good cohabitation, the good coordination with the protection of biodiversity, with fishing industry, with the industry. And this is beyond borders, so we have to do it with our neighbors, and we do that, and also to work on supply chains. We know that supply chains might be the bottleneck tomorrow, even closer than tomorrow. So we are also working with other countries on supply chains and on means for studies, for surveys, for installations. All this is part of cooperation. And then we have specific agreements with some countries which are very much in advance, such as Denmark. We have a cooperation agreement, bilateral agreement with Denmark, because they have a lot of experience feedback that we are sharing. Well, both ways, but we're learning a lot from our Danish colleagues, all of that.
Great. Thank you very much, Sophie Mourlon. Let's now get a developer's perspective. Cédric Bousse, you are Director for Marine Renewable Energy at France's EDF. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for welcoming us today.
Thank you for thank you for coming. Your company has so far won bids for 5 offshore wind farms in France. Can you give us a quick overview of where these projects stand at this very moment?
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. So maybe just a quick wrap up on EDF Renewables activity in offshore wind specifically. We have a 20-ish gigawatt portfolio of offshore wind around the world. Of course, a number of projects in Europe, but as well some projects that are operating in mainland China and some projects on development in the US. Now, if I zoom on France for a second, we have commissioned the Saint-Nazaire project at the end of last year. It's now up and running and delivering renewable electricity for about 700,000 inhabitants every year. We are building the Fécamp project. The foundations are on the ground, the substation as well, and the first turbine will be installed very soon. We are as well installing and building the Provence Grand Large floating pilot project. It's 3 turbines off the shore of Fos-sur-Mer and Port-Saint-Louis-du-Rhône. The 3 floaters are today in the harbor floating, and we are installing the first turbine on the first floater. So we will be sending this turbine floater plus turbine on top of it to the site offshore 17 kilometers of the beach at the end of the summer, beginning of autumn. Now, continuing our trip around France, we are also building the Courseulles project. Courseulles project has its substation installed. We will install the foundations next year, and then the turbines in early 2025. And then, of course, we are developing and continuing the permitting process of the Dunkerque project and starting the development process of the EO4 Manche-Normandie project.
One of the big hurdles in France is opposition to offshore wind farms. You obviously have a certain amount of experience already. What have you been doing to get people on board at your project, local residents?
Yeah, so definitely we are talking about accelerating these projects. They need to be accepted while we accelerate, and we need to do both at the same time in parallel. So it's paramount that the state, when it's in charge of developing the beginning of the project, and then the developer who has been awarded the tender, make these projects accepted within the population. Clearly, to do special planning, a public debate very early in the development stage is helping a lot. That's very good news. It's been changing in terms of process, and now I think the process is the right one. So we are really counting a lot on this public debate early to have all stakeholders involved in the development. But the public debate is only the beginning of the journey. In fact, this journey is continuing through development stage, construction, and operation. And the projects are we need to accompany these projects in terms of communication, in terms of explanation, and discussions, exchanges with the public stakeholders during all the phases of the project, and that clearly is what developers are doing. So again, public debate is the beginning of the journey, and this is continuing all along the project's life. Now, in terms of ensuring the good development of projects, we also want these projects to be well integrated in their environment. Of course, in terms of pure biological environment. So what we are doing is we are doing a number of surveys, having a lot of support from local NGOs to help us define the processes, to help us carry out the surveys themselves so that we gain know-how and knowledge on the sites, and that we develop together with them all the measures, environmental measures that we put in place in order to build and operate these projects with the best techniques in terms of biological impact. Of course, we need this project to be well integrated within the various stakeholders that use the zone. And here, what we have chosen in France, government and the developers, is really to share the space that we have in the offshore wind projects, which is not a decision that a number of other countries have made, probably because they have different types of fishing activity. But clearly, we are developing our projects so that fishing is possible during a big portion of the construction phase and also during the development phase. And I'm really glad to see that on the Saint-Nazaire project, the zone is open to fishing activities for now more than 6 months. Also now to sailing activities. So the public can go with the right permits, but they can go on the site in Saint-Nazaire and they can sail within the wind farm. That's also a way to have this project well integrated. And of course, I'll finish by the industry and by the jobs that we create through this project. We need this project, but we've been talking about that a lot at this table during the morning. We need these projects to create jobs locally. And that's what we've tried to do on our AO1 project, with substations built in Saint-Nazaire, with the turbines manufactured in Saint-Nazaire and in Le Havre, with the cables manufactured in France as well, etc. So we need communication, we need stakeholders to be involved during the development of the project, and of course we need jobs for these projects to be well accepted.
Do you have the feeling that other countries are looking at France and thinking we should do the same when it comes to what you just said, to fishing activities and offshore wind farms?
Well, I think we have a lot to learn from these other countries. Maybe we can also teach them a few things, but I think it really depends as well on the type of activities you have in these countries. If you have bigger fishing vessels that fish very far from the shore, then it's not necessary to provide these rights to fish within the sites. In France, we have smaller fishing activities, so we clearly need to find a way to collaborate and to work together on the same site, because otherwise you will take some portion of their fishing activity, which you might not do in other countries.
All right, thank you very much, Cédric Bousse from EDF. Vincent, Bales, you are Director-General Europe at Skyborn Renewables, that is developing offshore wind projects all across the world and in France. Now, like elsewhere, the price for offshore wind in France has been going down. The latest 1 gigawatt project, La Manche 1, obtained a price of 44 euros per megawatt hour, if I'm informed correctly. Is that necessarily a good thing, the low price?
Question in this forum. Hello everyone. Maybe a word of Skyborn before going to your question. Indeed, Skyborn is one of the leading offshore wind platform in the world. We have in France 2 projects in cooperation with EDF, the project that were mentioned by Cédric, the Fécamp project and Courcelles project, and we have several other projects under construction or operation in Europe. Question about price. Is it good to have low price for offshore wind? A few years ago, it was really a blockage, the price of electricity for offshore wind. Offshore wind was not that much developed in France because the price were still high. So I will not say today that it's not good to have low price and competitive price for offshore wind, but maybe here we are going a bit too far. We are going further market price. I'm not talking only about France here. We are talking about most of the offshore wind markets where offshore wind is pushed to go further than markets. We have several countries outside France. We have several countries where there is zero bid auctions, And then on top of that, there is a competition between the bidders to go beyond. So that's a risk for the entire sector, because the race to the bottom is not sustainable for the whole sector. I have in mind the supply chain also, going so far, push also the supply chain to be very tight in terms of their financial and what we want. Offshore wind has been developed in Europe, and what we want here in France is that offshore wind stays with a strong European industry. So that's not only a topic for the offshore wind sector, it's a global topic for supply chain, that Europe shall be strong and have kind of protection also toward other areas of the world that are using similar scheme. So it's really important to develop this for offshore wind, but not only.
And what should be done then? Should we just put the price up again?
Maybe. No. What should be done? I just mentioned to you that beyond offshore wind, there are some political measures to undertake at a European level, which are already under discussion and start to be implemented. So on the industrial framework, it's important that there is the law ongoing on Industrie Verte in France that goes into that direction, and it's really important. This is at European level. But what else should be done on focusing offshore wind? The first one for France is to go for broader volume. Here we have been going over the last years on the one-to-one tenders. It would make more sense, and this is a direction taken by the ministry and very supported by the industry to go for bigger tenders. We are now talking for the next tenders. We have been listening carefully to the ministry this morning about that, talking about 10 gigawatt plus for the next tender. So to have a broader volume, that's important. The second point, and this is really important in the French case, which is not applying in several of the other countries. In France, we have a CFD which is indexed. So the CFD is awarded quite soon in the process, because we still have to run the development, but it follows the prices of the employment and steel factors and so on. So this indexation on CFD is really important to maintain in France. And a last point, a third point, it's about the criteria of the tender. Today in France we have not 100% on price. Nevertheless, over the last tender, we have seen that all the non-price criteria have been fulfilled by all the players. So it's important for the next tender to find ways to be more discriminative on these non-pricing criteria, and also to find the way to consider also the territorial push and territorial criteria to make this project successful, also part of these formal criteria of the tenders.
Talking about finances, do you think PPAs would be a solution, public-private partnerships?
The PPA, this was...
Public-private?
Power purchase agreement.
Oh, power purchase agreement. What am I talking about? Of course. Sorry.
Yeah, this was mentioned by DGEC. This was part also of the questionnaire that was circulated. Again, this model, the French model with the CFD indexed, is quite robust for the players. Nevertheless, PPA can bring some more flexibility also for the project. So now I said before that maybe we have been pushed a lot on to the bottom on price, bringing some flexibilities on PPAs, not 100% PPAs, but kind of flexibility into bringing some percentage of PPAs in the price could bring flexibility to the players. So going that direction would be positive in the tenders.
Thank you very much, Vincent Bales from Skyborn Renewables. Pierre Peysson, you are Director Offshore France at RWE Renewables. Thank you for being with us today. France is planning on ramping up its offshore wind energy capacity considerably. Does the country, in order to do that, does the country have to change its ways profoundly, do you think?
Very nice question, Lisa. Thank you for that. Just a couple of words regarding RWE. So we are working in various countries, various regulations. Even in some countries, there is several regulations in parallel. We have in operation 19 parks. We are working on bottom fixed. We have assets also in floating, and we are even thinking about how to connect tomorrow offshore wind and production of hydrogen. We are probably not there as of today in France, but I think the discussions will come. As of today, I would say France is probably in the second division still, but hopefully is going to come in the Premier League. And why? Because I would like to probably pay tribute to what has been done in the past over the last years. I've been working in this industry for 15 years. I can say that there is a lot of simplification measures that have been introduced regarding the public debate. It has been mentioned by Cédric. Now it's done prior to the auction, which is obviously a great idea. We have also limitation of the duration of the claim when we have a claim produced by one of our organization in order to give us visibility by when we'll be able to develop our projects. And we have a very good support scheme. Two sides CFD with indexation, which is obviously very fine. We have the availability, a lot of auctions ongoing, standalone auctions, 4 auctions ongoing, probably more to come if I refer to the announcement made by the minister this morning. And we, last but not least, we have also some very nice announcements regarding how to support the industry for the industrials, but also for the ports. However, we need to identify the sites remaining. As of today, we have identified 10 gigawatts of site. If we have a look about the roadmap foreseen by 2035 or even by 2050, we probably need to identify more than 30 gigawatts of sites by mid-24. This is the target here, and precise sites. And we probably also need to work on the auction planning to feed into the pluriannual energy plan, meaning by when these auctions will be launched, by when they will be awarded, and what is the capacity. And we probably need to skip from standalone auctions to less auctions, but more volumes, meaning multi-gigawatts auction, multi-projects, multi-technology, in order to reach a target and give the visibility to the industry. So this is about the planification. Second topic is about anticipation. We need to go quicker. As of today, the CODs, meaning the commissioning date of our projects, are very late, which is quite unusual in the European market. So we need to have a fixed date. We need to deliver as quick as possible. Probably we need to reinforce the discussions with the ports regarding the requirements, and lots of discussions ongoing with the government, but also with the industrials, sharing what do we need in the future to build our projects. We had very nice discussion yesterday regarding the TSO and to develop the green connection as soon as possible in order to avoid being in a situation where the project will be ready but the green connection will not be there. And last point regarding the anticipation, it's about the environmental studies. We should be able, regarding the French regulation, to apply for authorization just after the bid award, but as of today, it's still not the case, and we probably need to work with the government to anticipate as much as we can and share the protocols of the studies that needs to be done regarding the environment, but also for the technical studies. Last point is about the simplification of the auction design. As of today, one auction is more than 2 years. It's also very unusual in Europe. So we need to go quicker. Consultation has been done. I hope so that we'll have a quicker auction period. We consider that 12 months is probably enough, providing the fact that we have anticipated all the studies to be done before. And one thing I would like also to thank Vincent to put this on the table is to consider that we have also a challenge at the European level regarding the industry. We have to avoid 2 races. One race to the bottom regarding the price. We will not be able to offer jobs and a sustainable industry if we are going down and down in terms of the price. As of today, offshore wind has demonstrated its capabilities to produce green electrons very cheap. And we need to work on how we can work with the industry with facing massive investment to come. 7 gigawatts as of today is a capability to build in Europe. We need to go by 20 gigawatts by the end of the decade, and we need to support investment there. So, and second topic is linked to the duration of the auction, is a race, but to the top, not on the price, but on the turbine capacity. And if we manage to put the commissioning date as early as possible, it will avoid, consideration regarding what will be the capacity to be installed by 30, 41, 32, 33. Turbine doesn't exist, and it's a big issue for the industrials, and most of all, it's an issue with the regulator, who don't have the skills to really assess regarding the robustness of the criteria for the CAPEX, the OPEX, especially what's going to happen with this new technology that doesn't exist. So as soon as we manage to fix the COD in the very short term, I think we can probably optimize by 2 years, keeping the system as it is as of today with more anticipation into the studies, will be a very big support for our industry. Last point, non-pricing criteria. It's essential as of today. There is no discrimination at all. And if we think about auctions where it's full PPA in some countries, full PPA means it's a rebid for bottom fix, and then it's full non-pricing criteria. And we need to think about how we can design this kind of new criteria in order to measure them, to have some differentiating criteria as well on this, in this regard.
Okay, so you don't seem to agree completely with Vincent.
Which is bad or good?
No, I'm not. I'm just, just saying. Thank you very much, Pierre Peysson. Marc, you're country manager of France at Ocean Winds. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Just in a nutshell, you're developing the two 496 megawatt offshore wind farms, Dieppe and Noirmoutier, off the French coast. Can you give us an overview of where these projects are at right now?
Yes, of course. I would say that at Ocean Winds we have been very active in the first semester of this year because we have taken FID for 3 important projects, raising something like 7.5 billion in 1 month for 1 project in the UK, which is a Moray West project, and 2 important projects in France, so the Dieppe project and Noirmoutier project. And we are now entered construction phase, and we expect basically COD in 2025 and 2026, which will be an important step in contributing to energy transition in France.
Right. And can I ask you the same question as I asked Pierre just beforehand? Does France have to change its ways to go forward to grow bigger?
I would say that a lot has been done already, and I would like to thank the Ministry and DGEC. Because the legal framework has been improved significantly since the beginning, three important laws has been taken. Now the permits are more flexible. The timing to manage the claims is shorter. So I would say that the CFD, it has been said many times, is a good instrument. The fact that the French administration is de-risking the project a lot before the tender is a plus as well. Which explains, by the way, the fact that the prices are low because they are quite, the risk is quite limited. I would say that a lot has been done, and the framework is there, and it's fine. Now, as everybody has said, for me there are 3 important things to improve. One which is underway, which is planification, and we would like and to see basically what are the projects to be built in the next 10, 20 years, which will be done through the planification exercise, and it's great. The second topic is industrialization. We will definitely need to industrialize the process of the tender, to have more standardized process, more and bigger tender as well, as it has been said, and multi-gigawatt tender. And the last point, maybe, which was raised this morning, I think, by RWE, is the diversification. I would say that there are a lot of developers around this table, and it would be very important that the government finds a way, basically, to use the energy of all those players, basically, which are around the table, in order to accelerate.
No names are named, obviously. If there were indeed mega tenders coming up in France, does France have the backbone? Do we have the supply chain to do that, to grow very fast?
I think there is no issue in terms of industrial capacity. If you look at the situation today in France, Cédric has mentioned 3 projects. There is the Iberdrola project, and we have 2 projects under construction, which is at the same time 6 projects under construction with 8 megawatt turbines. You can really do the same with today 24 megawatt turbines, which would mean a huge amount, almost 10 gigawatt in construction at the same time. So what is key in this respect is really the planification and the allocation of the project. Because as soon as the projects are allocated to a developer, then you can start to take commitments towards industrial who can develop capacities. So this is why we push basically to have a big tender and a lot of tenders earlier on in the process in order to be able to contract with suppliers who will then develop capacities. So I'm a strong believer that we could basically reach this 40 gigawatt target before 2040.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Marc Hirt. Thank you, everybody. And can I just bring in Jane Cooper, who should be connected to us from the UK, from London? Do we have Jane Cooper? Ah, hello. Good afternoon, Jane. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
You're the Director of Offshore Wind at trade association RenewableUK. Now, the UK has completed around 14 gigawatts of offshore wind energy and is in the middle of round 4. What's going to happen next? What are the country's goals?
Going to happen next? I don't know. So we are, as you say, 14 gigawatts are built and operating. We're actually in the middle of auction round 4 for CFDs, and that's expected to finish sometime between mid-July and mid-September, depending on any challenges. It'll be interesting to see what prices come out of that, see if they fall further, and how many gigawatts come out of that. We're also looking, Crown Estate, who owns the seabed, is looking to lease the Celtic Sea, leasing round 5. And that would be around 4 gigawatts, and that's probably towards the end of the year. So during about 3 prime ministers ago, with Boris Johnson, maybe, I don't know, maybe just a year ago, there was a British energy security strategy that was published, which made a commitment to 50 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030, and that would include 5 gigawatts of floating offshore wind. It's a really, really ambitious target. The target has kind of doubled almost in the last 4 years, from 30 gigawatts to 40 gigawatts to 50 gigawatts. So it's not to be underestimated. It's not easy to achieve. And that was actually recognised by the government, and this has carried on through the subsequent governments. And Tim Pick was appointed as the offshore wind acceleration champion, and he published his report in April. And he has done a great report, actually. He spoke to a lot of people in the industry to understand the challenges and was able to come in with a fresh pair of eyes. Now, many of these things I think we recognise, but actually it was very helpful to put them out in writing, and we're actually going through now as an industry, having a look at them and actually working out which ones we can take forward, which ones maybe are harder to take forward, and how we can work together properly, collaboratively. That's the only way we're going to do it now, across industry and with government. I mean, I think there's a couple of things that I've not heard specifically mentioned during your conversation. One of them for us in the UK, one of the real challenges is around grid. And I think that I would expect all countries to have this as all countries start to electrify. We have huge problems and challenges with the grid. We don't have sufficient grid. The connections are delayed. It's challenging to lay the pipeline because there's a lot of community consultation that happens. It was quite an old process for quite a new technology that's bringing forward a lot of wind in more remote areas where it wasn't expected. So that's one of the challenges I would see. I think the other one is around the skills challenge. We've just published a report. We need around 100,000 people in our industry by 2030 to deliver even a pipeline of 40-45 gigawatts. And that's from around 35,000 people right now. So that's about 10,000 people a year we're looking for.
Yeah, many markets are facing these challenges you just mentioned. The grid connection also ramping up, having people who actually can work in the sector. What's the UK's strategy to solve these problems to take those hurdles?
Well, we have a strategy. I hope. Do you know, I think that one of the challenges with the grid is we've got the transmission operator, we've got the regulator, we've got the government, we've got the users, we've got the system operator. So it's about 5 or 6, and then you've got the suppliers, obviously supplying the grid. You've got 5 or 6 major players in this, and in a way, COVID couldn't have come at a worse time probably for us as an industry. We worked through it. But I think some of that places where you come together and you talk about these things together, and when you've got knotty problems, difficult problems, you work them through together and you have a conversation here and like you take the conversation over here and you move it forward. I think that really delayed us, to be honest, because we were having conversations, but they were all by teams, which is much harder. So I think now we have kind of come together. Ofgem's got a net zero remit. The national grid transmission is kind of, that's now got a clear vision and a clear way forward. We have a clear ambition about what we need to connect and where the connections are going to be, also the Crown Estate, where they're going to lease. So I think now we've actually started to pull everyone together and everyone's beginning to sort of, we're all pointing in the same direction. We're all heading the same way. We need to get a little bit tighter, a bit more pointy and a little bit more linked together, but we're now getting there. But it's been quite a challenge.
So, yeah.
On the grid, and if you can start as early as possible on grid would be my, really positive advice. On the skills, everyone talks about skills being a real challenge. Everyone talks about skills being a challenge. Everyone wants to make sure we've got enough people coming through science and engineering. We've got enough apprentices. It's really difficult. I think it's the first time we've gone through this major ramp up. We are working now with government, with the Department of Education. We're working with other industries and other sectors to actually kind of bring everyone's learning up together and thinking about where we transition people from oil and gas, or we transition people as they leave the military forces and they can transition into our industry.
Right, thank you very much. Liz, Jane Cooper, obviously from Renewable UK, and it's like there is a silver lining maybe in the UK as well.
Oh yes,
absolutely.
Thank you, Lois.
Thank you. With us here is also Liz Burdock. Sorry to have you wait so long. Thank you for being with us.
Lovely to be here.
You're the president and CEO of the Business Network for Offshore Wind, and you came all the way from Maryland in the US to see us. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
As opposed to other markets such as the UK or European markets, the US offshore wind sector is still in its early days, but you have great ambitions. 30 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030, and on a state level, it's even more than that. The plans on the state level add up to more than 40 gigawatts. Can you tell us a bit about the process, how this is going to work? Because there are different layers in the US. It's not the same way it works there than here.
Absolutely, I can. And it's a bit of a long answer, and it's a complicated answer. So first, let me say thank you for being here. In the United States, there's 3 important entities that play a role in creating our market. First is the federal government, the second are the states, and the third is the developers. It was great to see the Department of Energy here, but it's actually the Department of the Interior at the federal level, and specifically an agency called the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management that is responsible for siting and then permitting our offshore wind areas. This process kicks off by the states requesting that the federal government, BOEM, undertake a stakeholder process to deconflict the sites, and that happens. It's usually about a 2-year process. BOEM holds a lot of meetings with the different ocean users. They deconflict the site, and then once the final environmental impact statement is done on that area, all the surveys and socioeconomic impact studies are finished, they will delineate the area for auction that they will then auction through a process to our developers. Simultaneously, or before or after, the states can create policies to pay for the power, which is essentially either a power purchase agreement or an offshore renewable energy credit. We do not have contract for differences in the United States. So those are two of the mechanisms, the financial mechanisms that the states use to purchase the power. And we've actually have 42 gigawatts of offshore wind power that will be paid for through these states' process. And so, as I said, this can happen before, during, or after the federal government does their auction. If it happens after, the price for the leases are usually pretty reasonable, about $300 million, which is what happened in North Carolina, or they can be astronomical, like the $4 billion wind energy area leases we had for New York. So that's essentially how the process works in the United States.
All right, and what would you say for your market specifically? What are the main hurdles you'll need to take?
So we have the same hurdles that everyone else has. We have supply chain capacity issues, we have grid and transmission issues. We're solving them much to the similar way the UK is solving those. I will say about supply chain, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act is a great incentive for companies to invest in the U.S., specifically Tier 1 suppliers for advanced component manufacturing. But we still need our Tier 2s and our Tier 3s. So we are looking for companies, European experience, to come over and work with our companies to help build up our capacity and our expertise to deliver on our ambitious goals. We're not going to rely on Europe. I don't think we can. You all have your own goals. So we need to build our supply chain from the ground up. And then finally, I would say our permitting, our consenting process, as you call it here, it takes way too long. It's 10 years, right? But I think we've cut it maybe to 8. That's still incredibly long. And we need to get it down somewhere between, I think you all, your US counterparts would agree with me that our consenting process is way too long, that it needs to be in a 3 to 5 year period, because a lot can happen in that 8-year period, as we've seen. It makes the economics sometimes go upside down.
When it comes to the supply chain, some people were mentioning that you might have to set up 2 supply chains, one for each coast. Is that the case, or do you think one is going to be enough?
I think for the large component manufacturing, we will have to set up 2 supply chains. We will also have to set up vessel construction on the West Coast as well as on the East Coast. We'll also have to set up steel manufacturing on the West Coast as well as on the East Coast. And then you'll obviously have to have your turbine, your foundations, your cables, all of that will have to be a West Coast supply chain as well, I believe.
Yeah, you mentioned vessels. I mean, obviously there's the Jones Act that says goods shipped between the US ports have to be transported by ships that are built, owned and operated by United States citizens or permanent residents. You also mentioned the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. Here in Europe, some companies might have some kind of fear that they can't operate freely in the US market. Do you think this is their right to have that fear, or do you only see it as an opportunity for the US market?
We see it as an opportunity. We don't see it as a fear. In fact, last week I was with a UK company that designed a special handling tool specifically because of the Jones Act. It will pick up the nacelle, the GE nacelle, and we'll put it on a feeder barge, and the feeder barge will take that nacelle out to the WTIV that will be working in the field that is a European vessel. So we do have a solution, which is the feeder barge solution, which we are seeing actually Europe look at innovating, or Europe look at using here as a possible innovation. So we don't see Jones Act necessarily as a barrier to the US market. We're seeing 33 ships are now under construction. The IRA has shipbuilding and tax credits with it as well. So we think that we can solve that problem, but the world has a vessel problem. So we all need to be building ships.
Absolutely. And do you think you as a market, the US as a market, will get inspired a lot from other markets abroad? And if so, which ones? Which are most similar to yours?
So we've taken a lot of lessons from Europe for the past 15 years, and we'll continue to do so. I think for our West Coast projects, we will look to Asia to help with some of our lessons for the West Coast, and specifically also to the Gulf of Mexico. I think Jocelyn mentioned that we're going to have a wind energy area auction off of our Gulf of Mexico by the end of the summer. Those turbines will also have to come from innovations in Europe as we think about hurricanes and we think about turbines operating in low wind speeds. So we will be looking for innovations, and specifically I should also mention France. We'll be looking for innovations from France in the floating offshore wind sector. I think you all are ahead of us in this sector. We have a pretty ambitious goal of 15 gigawatts by 2035. So we are going to need as much expertise and innovation that you all can provide as possible.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for taking part in this panel, and thank you, everybody, for listening. I think we have a sketch by Fanny. There we go. She just summed up what we heard about. Big. It's about cooperation amongst countries, the supply chain, public debates. We need to create jobs, ramp up to 40 gigawatts in France, obviously. And we are getting there. Let's end on the positive note.